Hello, I'm Toycat, and welcome back to the episode of my Minecraft Xbox Update Adventures Let's Play. This is the Let's Play where I'm playing through the various updates that have come out for Minecraft Bedrock and giving you the weekly update as to what's going on in the survival world alongside of it, of course. And in case you're curious about this week, I've decided to finally do something that people have been asking for a while. It's going to involve a brand new crafting recipe that obviously, it's not actually new in the slightest, but people forget it all the time. So it's probably going to be a brand new recipe as far as you're concerned. And we're going to combine these pop chorus fruits that we've just gotten right here with some blaze rods which come from the nether. So by combining a nether feature and by combining a end feature, you can take the two things together and you can make yourself end rods. These again, to me even, like, these seem shocking every time you make them, but every time I craft them in some form of video, people are like, oh wow, yeah, that's a thing you can craft. I always thought you had to get them from the end cities, and lots of people like myself and mine them that way, but yeah, you can actually craft them in mass if you really want to, and this is quite useful if, let's say, you want to make some form of side parting for your end city. And these things are going to be quite useful for the task we have today that people have been asking for quite some time. By the way, I entirely rediscovered a pathway between my main portal at my main house and my end stronghold, which is this little tunnel right here, actually made by the game as part of the Nether Fortress. It actually is super convenient, and it links up two of my Nether portals way easier than the route I've been using this entire time, because again, the Nether portal is literally over there, or if I want to, I can even go through here and do it that way. But the fact is, it saves me effort compared to my usual route, and I'd forgotten about it for quite some time. I've been wasting literally seconds of my day doing the inefficient route, and there's something kind of funny about that, like making a small mistake so frequently, I guess. But yeah, let's take our end rods, let's put them in the end, and let me show you right now exactly what we can do with them, because again, I think they fulfill a very specific role for what we're trying to do right here, and that is the side paths of my Blue Ice Highway. I don't actually think we need this all the way. I just want it for a little bit at the start. That's why I have 128 for a 1,000 block long pathway. But basically, what I want to show you is I want to have them be on the sides right here, because if you use a full block, let's say we'll use Netherrack, which you wouldn't use because it'd be ugly, but if you use Netherrack on the sides right here, you have two issues. One is that, I mean, it's big and it's bulky, and the second one is that you actually can't properly, you know, like slide a boat in there if you try. Let me just prove this right here. Here's a boat, as you can see. It goes very fast on blue ice, but if you try and get it between the gaps, you're gonna have some big issues. Let me prove that one right to you right here, because boats are bigger than 1 block wide. They don't seem like they are, and that's because they didn't used to be. As best I know, the increase in size actually came with the update that gave them these paddles and the different types, etc. But you can't get a boat through that gap, and that is really tragic. You might be able to place a boat in that gap if I'm not mistaken, but again, it's not going to be working perfect even if it does. And actually, you know, I need to know. I feel like you can. It just goes inside a block on the side, and again, you can see I'm actually trapped inside of the block right here, which is weird because I just went through it. But yeah, you see the point how you can't really do this, even if you really want to, for whatever darned reason. So what you can instead do is use a partial block. So for instance, fences are great, but also so is the end rod. This is because it goes in the middle of the block, and then we can have these on the sides, and this will have two effects. One of which is, of course, the fact that, like, oh yeah, that means the space we can go over here is a bit wider. Again, you can see you can probably go off the side of your block right here. And the second one, the kind of more marginal benefit, is these look really cool. Again, this is a crafting recipe people forget all the time, but these are an item that have such a, you know, versatile use. They kind of look like laser beams, kind of look like a, you know, like a, I guess like a light rod, because they are a light rod, kind of like the blind, you know, those lights you get in like ceilings of really old houses and stuff. So it's kind of like those as well, and just being able to use these to me is a really cool effect, because now we can place our boat down with no fears, and as you can see, it kind of holds us in place quite well as well. You can't really go that far left or that far right, which means you feel pretty safe, even though there is this big gap between you and the void, which I'll show you is even going to be more pronounced than you might expect. Even though there is going to be that big gap right there, it's still going to be quite clear that you can't fall down there, and also it's going to look cool as heck. So yeah, what we do is this, which we can even run along if we want to, which feels extra nervous, but it's fine. We can remove these two blocks because they're not necessary anymore. I think we should replace them with something eventually. I mean, I don't precisely know what. That's a thing we can work out as we go. And then, yeah, we can have like a very clearly laid out pathway, which can go not only here. Oh, I'm very nervous about looking the Enderman in the face. I've done that so many times during the bigger part of today's thing that we're working on, the end pathway. And yeah, having them chase you when you're on a 1 block wide thing, which is literally leading into the void, is a little terrifying, which is why maybe some supports are necessary. But yeah, I just want the kind of proof of concept to be here. I just want the fact, like, I want it to help me go on a straight line and to feel like it's helping me. Because there's actually something kind of interesting about the real world and Minecraft in general, that, like, when you have something that looks like it does a function, and if you believe it does that function, you'll be able to do the function you think it's doing yourself kind of more easily. This is, I guess, what stabilizers are a bike, therefore, right? Like, oh, I can fall anytime I want, therefore I'm not going to fall, therefore I'm going to learn how a bike actually works. Although, personally, I just enjoyed leaning on the stabilizers. But, you know, like, I know, stuff like that. As you can see, as soon as you think that you're safe, you're going to be entirely safe going forwards beyond that point, because you'll be able to use the same pattern replication thing. So yeah, that's a thing we can now do. And yeah, I just want to place a few more of these, just so you can appreciate that in the otherwise dark and endless void where there's nothing really to see or do anywhere, having these light rods, these end rods, these things here, can really light it up, can protect you from Enderman, and also protect you from your own worst fate. Although, again, realistically speaking, can I talk about this one? Even though I love making people anxious, I've got a whole video plan just specifically about that thing, actually, just to make people anxious some more. Even though that's a thing I love, stuff like this proves that boats, again, their hitbox is bigger than you actually expect. Somehow this shovel is holding up the entire thing. And even though personally I think when I break this, there's a good chance I don't get the boat back. Just like that. You know, I didn't want the boat anyway. The truth is like, hitboxes are much bigger than you think, and as a result, having 90% of your boat over the edge isn't actually a dangerous thing. I actually, you know, in real life, I do pretty much the same thing. Like, I leave phones, like, leaving 40% hanging off the edge of an object, knowing that people just naturally don't like things that look like they're precariously balanced. Like, people like a perfect art balance more than a little bit one, and yeah, there's something about that I like to abuse. So yeah, with that said, now, even though it's still easy to misplace a boat, leaning against the railing, as you're going to see, allows us to much faster go when we're going against it, which means that there might be some actual science in us putting those all the way along this thing, just because it'll allow us to not only, you know, go, you know, right now we have to kind of like tilt left and right the whole time. People are nervous, anxious, and like, if we make one mistake reading chat wrong, we could go off the edge without even realizing it. In fact, do you want to see what happens if I go off the edge? I'll show you right now. I'm kind of worried about this one. Okay, we're good. But as you can see, you go off the edge, and then you're doomed to death. And if you go too low, what happens is you entirely die. Also, it's interesting, I fell off, but the boat didn't. Wait, did the boat fall off? I feel like I just saw it fall off right there. But, yeah, there's this rather interesting... Oh, no, here we go. There's the boat. We're fine. But there's this rather interesting fact where, you know, people are very, very nervous about seeing the endless void because they know all your stuff can be lost there. It's one of the few ways in Minecraft to lose everything, you know, like not only just to die, but to die and lose all your stuff at the same time. And yeah, I get why people are scared of it, but also it's not a real fear, but it is something that could be made easier. So let me know, is that something you'd like to see in the world? That's a thing we can do in the future. But for now, the big focus of today's video, the big thing I need to get done, and the reason I've brought you here into my home, into my Let's Play today, is because of the big never-ending road, which, again, I love the name, the never-ending road right here. It's, you know, it's a road with Neverac on, and then it's in the end. It's a never-ending road. Okay, it's hilarious. I get it. I find it funny. And, yeah, this is where I first found out that Endermen don't pick up Neverac, even though they're probably supposed to. You can see just how many we have here, actually, and just how much we benefit from having end rods on the side instead of those. Because, again, the Endermen spawn anywhere where the light level's low. They, funnily enough, are like mobs in the overworld. It's just you don't appreciate how low the light levels are because everything's lit by your eyes, but it still looks terrible otherwise. But yeah, so anyway, this is my whole pathway. And right now, the pathway is ridiculously well done. It's very, very, very well covered. If you look at any side of this thing, you'll see like, oh yeah, we're only missing a few blocks here and there, but it's those blocks I want to focus on today and just kind of bring up the uniformity of the whole pathway. You know, again, remove some end stone, replace it with some Neverac, and yeah, just make some of the last bits that aren't truly uniform, because I want to make a kind of video to summarize the 10-ish hours of work we've done so far, and I figured like before I do that, it'd be important to do this, and I figured like, oh yeah, well, given that it's the, you know, it's that pre-New Year's time anyway, given that, you know, this is a time that I wasn't know if I was going to upload a Let's Play anyway, I figured it'd be cool to talk about what's been going on the past week, etc., and do so while playing some Minecraft. So hello, I'm AbbyX Toycat. Welcome to Toycat Chills and Plays Minecraft. In case you're curious as to what I was up to this past week, most people say like, you know, Christmas shopping followed by like Christmas stuff. For me, it was like, I didn't think about anything else besides YouTube until literally the 24th of December, and then I did stuff even then too, because to me, the Christmas period is the time that's like extra important to upload. One, there's the obvious like financial incentive probably, but two, it's like the people who will watch your videos in the Christmas time, even though there's fewer of them, I feel like it's more important to those people to see something from a creator they might like. And given that this year is the year that convinced me that there are people who actually like what I do and maybe like me and actually want to watch the things that I do. I know that sounds insane to be like, but it really is a thing. Like the level of support that drifts from content to content really sends, YouTube is sending you the loud and clear message, like, your audience doesn't like you unless we want them to. And when YouTube sends that message and, they're proven right time after time again when they're like, oh yeah, trust me, your audience doesn't like you. And you're like, no, they totally love me. I mean, if I tell them there's a video, no, they won't come find it. It's all down to YouTube discovery features. It's a thing that can get, like, inside your head very quickly as to, like, oh yeah, I guess no one likes my stuff. They just happen to be fed it and happen to click on it. But something about this year, I can't tell you exactly what convinced me that, like, oh yeah, people actually do want to see the things that I do. And I feel like if that's a thing, then I feel like that's going to be especially true over Christmas, right? This is a time, because of the emphasis on family, which is something that as a society we're doing worse and fewer of us are doing at all. Because of the emphasis on family this time of year, you're either going to have a great time with family, you're not going to see these sorts of videos, and, well, this is the 30th of December, so, like, whatever. But, like, either you're going to have a great time with that, but also you might be in the time where it's like, oh yeah, something family. Instead, it's all about the adopted family. I still think chosen family is a very real concept. Like, what is it about having a 50-year-old, woman and man that happen to have a very outward sexual relationship? I mean, you came from that sexual relationship, right? Like, what is it about their relationship and they're probably dysfunctional, by the way. Like, again, sadly, most parents seem to have something slightly dysfunctional about them. That's just a fact we all share, right? So, like, they have a dysfunctional relationship, and for some reason you're expected to hang out with them as a result. It's cool when they treat you well and they make that a worthwhile relationship, but I also think, like, oh yeah, nah, family is something that to me should be to some extent earned. I think you can define your relationship with your children and your whatever else, and I think that's an important part of convincing people to become parents. But also the convincing part, the part I feel like a lot of people missed is, like, the part where you try to be the best parent, the part where you try to be the sort of parent that a child would like to have. And as a result, that's why I think, like, yeah, instead of hanging out with your family that dysfunction here, there, everywhere, to me it kind of makes more sense of, like, oh yeah, also though, choose your family. If you don't like, like people say you can't choose your family, you can choose your family. It's people who say that are the sorts of people who would rather you didn't choose your family, but it's an entirely choosable option. And if you've done so this Christmas, and if you choose me or any of your other friends that you're hanging out with or watching content streams, whatever for, I think that's kind of cool too. Because even though this is a very parasocial relationship, right? You know me so much more than I know you as a person, because of the sad dynamics of the fact that, the 1.3 million to 1 ratio, whatever it is. It means that you can't ever have a perfectly one-to-one relationship, but it's as long as you acknowledge that and take it in your stride. Is that a thing people say? But as long as you know that that's a fact, I don't think it's inherently wildly unhealthy or anything. Oh, I have some Netherrack still in here. How useful to know about. So let's put the end stone in there raw, just in case I ever need raw end stone, because I have a lot of slabs already. Then let's take some slabs out, and let's finish that gap that we left back there, because I didn't even notice that till just now. There's just a random gap of half slabs that I've moved the ground so I could place them, and then didn't go back and place them. Just feels a bit weird, but that's kind of fine. Anyway, so yeah, that was my point, is that Christmas is the time where if something family, whatever, that's when you're going to most need your chosen family of choice. And, given that we live in an age of parasocial relationships, maybe that includes this thing right here. And, yeah, unlike your real family, I won't tell you what your real relationship is like with me. I won't tell you that, I will tell you, unlike your family, I will tell you that, this is an entirely optional relationship on your behalf. And that's what makes it special. The fact that you can choose to stop watching, to unsubscribe, to never see a video from me again, that's kind of a cool thing. If you want, you can have a line in your head that once I cross, you can be like, I'm done with Toy Cat, he's cancelled. Didn't you hear what he said about gay Bowsers? He said gay Bowsers were not as good as regular Bowsers. Yeah, that's a, and if you don't like that comment, yeah, that's cool. If you think my belief that, gravel was a bad block is just something you can't stand, you can leave for that. If you think that I think Minecraft needs a cave update too badly, damn straight. Managed to fit it in a Let's Play just before New Year's Eve. But if you think these are things that you do not like personally, then of course, they're entirely... the fact that you can choose to end, halt, whatever the relationship because of that is something that makes the relationship more powerful, you could argue. And people who try to tell you that you're forced in a relationship, at least one of those forms. Again, I think this is funny. Maybe it sounds regressive and backwards compared to what I've been saying. I think the one relationship where you have like the forcible rules about how this thing goes on are the ones between. Actually, oh my god, I hate everything about this. But yeah, having the ability to end something is what makes it more powerful that you don't, is what I'm trying to say. And thank you for choosing not to end our relationship so far on this video. But yeah, so what have I been up to? I did a lot of like video stuff, prepared for the couple weeks ahead. If you don't know, I'm taking the gap between, I guess, Christmas and New Year's is what I'm taking off, in case you're curious. I finished streaming for 2020 or 2019. I had my last stream of the decade. It was wild. I went from, again, maybe this will remind you of the stream I just did, but like I went from streaming as like a weird sometimes hobby to like, oh yeah, this is a thing that I do now that people actively want to watch. There are people who watch the streams but not the videos sometimes. It's really weird when you develop a fan base for something new. I know I'm talking about something that like maybe a lot of you can't relate to, but one of the big things that is cool about ending something like that, or scary about ending that, is that like, yeah, there's this whole new thing that people want from you. Again, it goes back to the whole obligation versus, you know, like whether you're obligated to do something or whether it's a gift for you to do it. But like, it's really, there's something cool about when people want something from you and they're taking it from you on the terms you want. This is, again, this actually goes back to what I think defines a good relationship. If someone wants the things that you want to give and they want to do it in a way that you would like to, you know, and they're willing to do it on those terms, is what, to me at least, has always defined a good, you know, a dreams relationship, one that you want to have. Because think about it, right? Like, yeah, this is actually how the whole language of love concept works. The idea of like, there are certain traits of people, like there are some people who are more physical affectionate. There are some people who are more affectionate in terms of like, oh yeah, I'll do a nice thing for you. I'll do the chores for you. There are people who love to write poems and would love to have the spoken word used to regale them in their love and stuff like that. There are sorts of people who love all sorts of different forms of, you know, affection. There are people who like different forms of showing that they are cared about. And I don't know why this kind of came up in that, but like, it's cool, the streaming thing, because the people who follow for streams are never like mad that there's no stream. They're never like, oh yeah, here's a thing, gonna be super awful about this. And in fact, they're super, again, this is my, based on this end road actually, it kind of ties in perfectly, everything's gonna fall in together. The sorts of people who watch streams are super passionate about it to the degree where they'll support with a couple dollars here or $5, or even every one of these signs you pass is someone who's like, yeah, I'll pay $10, I'd love to, you know, pay the toy cat tax, help out the road in that way. It's people, in my opinion, one of the ways I like being showered with love, as you might expect. I feel like everyone's got this to some extent, but like, if people give you money, it shows that what you're doing is worth their money, right? Like, you don't spend money on things that you don't think it's a good idea to spend money on. And if you do, you don't have much money left to spend those things on. Unless you're a millionaire, but then, even then, you know, like, you can only spend money on things that you don't think have value for so long before you run out of the ability to do that, which means most people in society can only spend money on things that they think has some value to them. The fact that some people choose that as me blows my mind. It's like, whoa, that's insane. So to everyone who gave any form of super chat for any amount, or Streamlabs or whatever this year, thank you very much. The people who just did it because they felt like, oh yeah, this will help out, even better. Because some people are like, oh yeah, this is my way of spending, you know, 68 pence and talking to like, yeah, sure, that's cool too. Like, it's a service I am technically offering. But there's also people who are just like, yeah, would love to, you know, I've gone hours of entertainment and here's a few dollars back for it. Whenever I read those, it's like, it feels super sincere. And it reminds me of what I was just mentioning of the languages love thing. Like, there are certain types of people for certain types of people, and the fact that that applies in our weird online parasocial relationship is something I'm really thankful for this year, or yes, I'm really grateful for. And yeah, so I've been making a lot of videos, and before that I was streaming, and now I'm taking some time off, I guess. I really feel like YouTube as a creative endeavor is something that I benefit from taking decent breaks from, at least on the main channel. I always have the desire to do something, so sometimes I end up making weird second or third channel videos that I'm sure some of you know about or care about already. But like as far as like an endeavor, I like the idea of daily content. I want to be reliable, but also I know that to make that, I have to take long breaks, which means I have to prepare for long breaks, and means I have to go through cycles of like making lots of videos versus a few. But it's something that's fun in the abstract, fun in the general, and which yeah, now you know a little bit more about me, I guess. So yeah, now we're gonna place a few more of these. Again, keeping the road as consistent as can be. We can't mine down the sides of the mountain just to have some stabs there. To me, that actually looks worse than when we build into the terrain, like we're doing right here, where you can see we place it as long as we can, and then that starts to happen. To me, that's a slightly better look. Yeah, you can disagree, you can agree, you can do whatever you want with that one. But yeah, we're just gonna mine even more Nevrak and continue to mention that, yeah, being busy is like the worst thing to mention. This is something I've realized about with friends too. Like as people are slowly growing up, like everyone eventually comes to a stage where they're like, I'm gonna start, you know, like working and doing things more. When people get to that stage, they become much more focused on talking about weird niche things about their job, even things they assume no one cares about, but they're like, oh yeah, but would love to talk about them anyway, like the weird niche technicalities of working at a... Like, actually, wait, I've got a story. It kind of relates to chosen friends, I guess, because it's a friend who chose not to be friends with me a long time ago. I had a really petty... you know, I'm just gonna call him out. I had a really petty friend, it was a good friend. Like, we bonded over video games, like, a long time ago, like, when we were, like, 16, maybe. Like, I don't know, we're at a campsite, and a lot of people were doing lots of other things, and we're just like, hey, you want to talk about our favorite Zelda games? And it was like, heck yeah. So we were friends for, like, we happened to also meet each other on the first day of college, and it's like, oh, wow, what are the odds of seeing you here? We can, you know, like, now we're like college friends. And we're friends for, like, maybe 2.5, 3 years, and then one day, I made one comment. Bear in mind, you know, I like to be controversial. I like to confuse people, offend them. It's a fun thing. It's fun to do. I made one not even wildly offensive comment. I just made one, like, one jab at one of the online well, it's not even a personality, like an online figure. They don't make enough stuff to be a personality. Like, they're more like a celebrity than they are like a YouTuber or, again, a personality, an influencer. But because you know, because of that, they're like, I don't want to be friends with you. And that's a funny joke, right? Don't want to be friends with you over one comment. But he literally walked off and then refused to speak to me any situation after that. Like, I never actually, you know, between like now and then, like 5 years ago, pretty much nothing happened. I found a message from him recently where he's like, hey, I saw you commented on my status. Please don't do that. I don't want people to think that we're friends and we're not. Like, it was the weirdest thing. I don't know what his deal is as a person. But recently, I reconnected with him because he saw me at the cinema when I was going to watch Rise of the Skywalker. Should we talk about that here? Let's not talk about that here. So, yeah, he saw me while I was going in, and I decided to send him a basic message being like, hey, do you want to actually catch up, just get a drink, see what's going on? And he's like, you know, sure, maybe, question mark. And then he starts to talk about the nicheties of, like, being in a cinema. Like, oh, yeah, you know what the worst days are? X, Y, Z. I hate when people bring in, you know, like, all the nicheness of being in a cinema. Because once you do something for a long amount of time, that becomes the bulk focus of your life. Even when something is quite... Even when you know that that thing is unrelatable, you're able to talk about it. And that's something that I'm always, like... that's why I'm always, you know, when I'm talking about YouTube... I tend to, like, have the rule of, like, if you don't know much about YouTube, let's just not talk about it. You have to ask me questions, and if your questions are basic, I'll answer them in the super basic way. Like, oh yeah, how do you make money on YouTube? Ads. Do you make money when someone likes the video? No. How about sponsorships? Big money. You know, I'll answer simply rather than trying to go into the depths about CPMs and terms like this. Because, yeah, it's one of those, like, easy points that, like, everyone kind of fails on. That, like, when some huge part of your life is focused on a thing, it's easy to only talk about that. And I made the mistake right now of talking to you about the ins and outs of what it's like to try and balance a YouTube schedule where you make, like, you know, 2 to 3 videos a day across a bunch of channels while streaming, while doing all these other things. It just isn't going to be interesting to the average non-interested person, which for most hobbies is going to be everyone, right? Like, the cool thing about YouTube is it allows you to find people for a hobby, But the odds of any of you being into knitting or downhill biking or making snowmen, is that a hobby? I feel like it should be a hobby to make snowmen, right? It's sadly not considered one. It's sadly just a thing everyone does. But I reckon there are some people who are really good at making snowmen. They buy their own snow cannons and like, you know, I like to believe this is a thing that's real now. You know, snowman making, officially a hobby. Changed my mind. But anyway, so, sidetrack tangent over. I kind of feel like, it's interesting that, like, when you're talking about the niche hobbies, you kind of have to talk about it on a surface level first to be really interesting to most people. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe that's me, like, trying to appeal to too many people. But is it so wrong to want to be understood by a large group of people? Like, being understood is, like, one of the most basic human desires. It's just we're all bad at knowing how to do it. Maybe. That's been my take on this, at least. So yeah, that's what I've learned from this past week, is that I did a lot of YouTube stuff, and then I realized very quickly that it's hard to explain what even like to people super close to my life, that I'm going to be spending some of the next days off with. Even to a lot of them, it's very tricky to explain and understand, like, so why you need to do so much now, but not later? And it's like the idea of having, like, an actual break, like, time for my brain to come up with stupid ideas that I want to complete when I'm back. Because, yeah, there's an interesting thing in creative fields where you can't just sit down and do work. In most cases, there's a video coming up that actually requires just a lot of, like, sat down and do work. Actually, there's a couple. Like, should I tell you about them now? Let's tell you about my video ideas, shall I? I'm working on one that's going to be, like, analyzing 50 different seeds for a few different criteria. That takes a lot of time to just sit down and do. So that's arguably one. Some parts of Minecraft, like mining the sandstone, I could just do this sat down at a desk if I wanted to. It's just more fun for me to record what I'm thinking and talking about, and, you know, all the stuff I've been up to in the past week at the same time. In my opinion, of course. You might disagree. And that's the wonderful thing about the internet. You totally can just disagree. It's got to be this one. Yep. So now we'll put the end stone in the box. This is the wrong box, apparently. Put the end stone in the box. Find whichever box has netherrack in. It's got to be this. Okay, it is in fact this one. Pick up this box. Grab out the rest of the netherrack, which we're very fast running out of. And let's do this. Actually, let's get some more slabs. Just to be on the safer side here. And let's pick up the boxes again. And we should be good for the rest of this now. Because most of what we're doing isn't... Oh, we gotta finish this little spot right here. Just to be good. Because, yeah, my goal isn't actually to have perfect netherrack all the way through. I just want it to be more consistent in the start. And then perfectly straight in the end. Which is something we're currently lacking. Because I want to be able to just press forward on my horse. See some stuff that, again, looks uniform for the first 3,000, 4,000 blocks. And then finish off with... You know, actually, I don't want it to seem like it decreases a huge amount in quality later, but it's going to have the inevitable decline in focus, because here's an interesting fact about roads, right? The longer you go on a road, the more time you spend on that road, the more time is the less the road is going to be used. This is something that's true for all transport infrastructure, but most people, you know, let's name 2 points in America, like. If we talk about, I don't know, Seattle to Florida. Wait, let's say Miami and Florida. If you think about a road between those two places, most people don't drive the entire length of the road. They drive small sections of the road somewhere in the middle. Sometimes towards the end. Maybe Seattle and Miami are big enough cities that it might be that way. But this is true for the, if I'm not mistaken, for the interstate system as well. Like, or any highways. Like, when you build a giant road with a lot of capacity... The problem is that people use small sections in the middle. Same with metros, actually. This is why, if you ever notice, metros in a city, the stations that are closest together are in the center of the city where most people are using it, because people just need to get in and around. Also, that's where it's most crowded, and that's also why it tends to be cheapest to travel within a city, because you're traveling shorter distances and more people are paying the fare. Whereas when you're talking about further out, fewer people have to do the same thing. So I guess that's true for what I'm saying right here, is a rail line, like a train track, has the exact same problem. When you have a rail route between two cities or 2 points in one city, more people are going to use somewhere in the middle than the entire length of it. And the same thing's true of this road. Like, I might go 3,000 blocks one day, might go 1,000 blocks another, but the number of times I'm going to travel the entire length of the road, even if I do that most of the time, it's going to be fewer. So that's why the focus should be more on the early parts of it. because it's a good way to increase the illusion that you've done the whole thing more correctly, I guess. Because even though I don't usually like the idea of like corner cutting in Minecraft, I think there are some cases where it's like logical to do so. Like it's more illogical not to corner cut under certain scenarios, I think. Controversial opinion right there, but that is in fact what I think. And yeah, I need to start placing netherrack so I can pick up all of this endstone we're apparently just leaving behind in the ground. Although if we place netherrack, we have to do so at the cost of endstone. So long story short, we're going to have a lot of endstone floating around. But that's fine. I mean, endstone is one of those blocks I just have far too much of, I guess. Far too much of. So one of the things, so even though I haven't been doing any Christmas shopping, I have went and bought lunch or like a few things. For, like, I really only bought lunch like twice during the Christmas period. But I noticed, when I had to go buy like, I don't know what I bought, like, oh, I bought dinner. I was going to do a Cooking with Toy Cat video, so I bought a bunch of, like, things for it. I was going to make vegan sausages, but then cover them in bacon and cheese, and it was going to be funny. It was going to annoy some people. Everyone, really, like, vegans would be annoyed, non-vegans were going to be annoyed. It was going to be a great stream, but anyway, didn't come to fruition, because busy, long story short. But, so basically, it's been super crazy. I think this is true for any UK, US, anywhere where it's festive. People go out more and more to buy holiday things. It's a form of increased demand, right? Like people, there are more reasons to buy things because you have people to buy them for. When you're buying for yourself, you go out a certain amount. Like, how much do we think we can treat ourselves? Less than we think we can treat others. To me, that's a sign of how great humans are. Like, we will find the money. We'll come up with reasons to find the money or to spend the money for other people. Even money we don't have. Like, it's a horrific financial decision, but people will do that for the purpose of giving gifts to other people. I think, you know, there's something nice to be said about humans as a result of that, in my opinion. But, yeah, so there's lots of people. And I was thinking, as I saw so many people, and, like, what I like to do when I see people, I know this is terrible of me, but, like, I like to imagine how they are as people sometimes. Just, like, what would it be like if that person was my friend? Because, you know, everyone's had this story of, like, oh, yeah, I was friends with someone that was way different than you would expect from someone who was X, Y, Z. You know, maybe people are different than they look. Looks do not tell you everything. Looks can be deceiving, I think, is the folksy phrase for this one. But it really is a truth, in my opinion, that, like, looks are very different to what things are. But also, a lot of the time, looks aren't deceiving. You know, the reason that phrase exists is not because looks are always 100% of the time accurate or whatever. Sorry, looks are 100% of the time inaccurate. The reason that looks need to be said to be deceiving, the reason that's a phrase that has been come up with, is because a lot of the time, you know, you judge someone by their looks, and you know, by something about them. Like, you know, people make judgments all the time. That's why first impressions matter, which is a phrase that people really do say, by the way. But you know, like when you first look at someone, you make a bunch of different assumptions about them. And so a lot of the time, you're actually right, and it's like, man, you stereotype. You know, you look like this, and you're into video games. You look like this, and you're into, I don't know, anime. You look like this, and it turns out that you work blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, all these tiny little things. And I was wondering, like, you know, it's kind of like when people have super, I don't know if this one's offensive, but this is my observation, not saying it's factual, just saying it tends to be true for whatever bizarre reason. Where'd my shulker box go? Did anyone pick it up? Did I place it down? Is it on the other side? I think it must be. But one of the interesting things is, like, okay, again, I hope this isn't offensive, but people who are slightly or very gay tend to have, like, sorry, no wait, this is the other way around. So people with, like, super, let's just call them gay voices. Like, that's offensive, but, like, there is a voice pattern that you associate with people who are in homo-romantic relationships, right? Or intend to seek one. But yet, that happens a lot of the time. And I wonder, like, how much of society happens, how much of that is, like, you know, pure correlation? Like, if you look X way and there's a Y chance you're that thing, sometimes those things cross over. And what percentage of that is when society tells you should be a thing, even super subconsciously, people listen and decide to become the thing the society basically just tells them they should be? What percent of people just look at something and go, oh yeah, of course. You know, I think the gay example is probably a more offensive one because that's like a big debate people have. Let's ignore that one to the side. Let's have it with something like, oh yeah, if you know, you look like a really shy person, are you going to be more shy because people assume you are that way? If you look super confident, you look like a leader, people look to you for leadership, and therefore you're in leadership situations more, you become someone who is a leader in that way. I wonder what percent of that is that based, and what percent is the other way. Like, oh yeah, I am someone with leadership material. I have, characteristics. Like, I like to lead when there's nothing happening, when there's a big dilemma. I'm the person who leads people out of that. Is it that people generally tend to, which way does it work around? Is it that people generally tend to coalesce around the ideas that people enforce on them, or do people throw outwardly into the world things that are associated with that? And I don't know for sure which one it is, but it's something that I find fascinating because the obsession the world has with appearance, like so many people try to convince you all the time, appearance doesn't matter in the slightest, don't you know? And it's true that appearance shouldn't matter in the slightest, but I have this issue when people try to frame it that it doesn't already. It's sad that it does already. It's a problem that we could do better to fix as a species, but right now the default way of the universe, the way that people are, is they're making slight subtle judgments about you all the time. You know, the way you move, the way you act, they'll make assumptions about your socioeconomic status based on various appearance markers. And these things, again, can tend to be true. There are people who, you know, I don't know, like, there are lots of things you can do that'll tell people about other things that you do. And I wonder about all of these as like, therefore, should the lesson really be, you know, don't judge people by their appearance? So, like, should it be that, or should it be, hey, or like, you know, like, no one will judge you by your appearance or whatever, and therefore it doesn't matter? Looks don't matter? It should be, looks shouldn't matter. That you should be teaching people on the front end of that, not the back end of it, in my opinion. Like, you've got to teach people to stop believing rather than try and convince them that they don't believe, that other people don't believe. At least that's my opinion, because I found this is true. Also, this is a weird chorus plant. I found this is true in a lot of areas where there's a big debate in the world over whether we should pretend we are the society we want to be, or whether we should acknowledge where we are and work towards where we want to be from there. You know, like there's a billion examples of this one, but like it's tricky whether to decide that, you know, is the current situation, or do we believe that we are where we want to be? Because if people believe we're already there, they'll get there faster because they'll adjust to where they should be. And personally, I've always been of the school of thought. Like, one of the things I love about pretty much any historical figure, like, or any, like, operator in terms of having to get things done, is when you can acknowledge, hey, here are my ideals, here are my beliefs. I'm going to very slightly, you know, like, to get the best thing done for everyone, sometimes those things have to be bent. Sometimes, it's called realpolitik in the real world. The idea that sometimes you have to do things that are inherently going to be tricky. It's something I find super inherently going to be seemingly against your own beliefs for the purpose of getting a good thing done. You have to, you know, for instance, I don't know, like, let's say, I don't know, a famous example might be siding with a country, you know, like, I don't know, here's an example. During World War II, or just before the World War II period, the rise of extreme, let's call it extreme left and extreme right-wing politics was happening in lots of different countries around the world. There were, at the same time as the Nazis, there were, you know, like, and the fascists, you might call them, there were also the communists springing up in countries like Russia, like two sets of evil that by most were seen as quite similar, practically speaking. Like, they are both people, they're both groups of people with extremely divergent extremely divergent views on the world, let's call it, like, that want to see and are potentially going to be violent about it. Two sets of ideals that were seen as very, very evil and opposite. But yet, in spite of that, you know, like, there was an alliance between the UK and Russia, two pretty much sworn enemies for the most part. Like, two countries very hostile towards each other became friends for the purpose of getting rid of the, you know, the other guys. Like, working with people you don't like is something like a natural thing in life that so many people are against, but yet it's a thing that makes things happen. Also, in case you're curious, I have been doing a lot of, like, minor background war research. I was making a video about World War One, and then as part of that video, I looked up a stat and went down one of those wiki walks. Do you know a wiki walk, right? Where you're on Wikipedia. Again, great website that I am now actually officially the part owner of, according to the email they sent me, because that's definitely what they want me to do, take those emails literally. But yeah, so they really sent me an email saying, you know, Wikipedia is basically yours, Andrew. But yeah, so it's where you start on a page, you click a link, you click another link, you click another link, and you do that so many times to the stage where you're just like, oh, how did I end up here? And my last one ended up on a guy called William Adams, who was the first British sailor to find Japan, also to find Thailand, by the way, and was also the first foreign samurai, like, again, samurai, like a proper high-end title, first foreign samurai ever recorded, and it's just a guy called Samuel, like the most British-sounding name dude, sailed over to Japan, and became Japanese in a time where that was... I mean, nowadays, it would still be hard to sail to Japan, but, like, going to Japan and becoming Japanese is actually still very hard to this day. The culture is very non-built around the idea of outsiders. Like, outsiders, no bueno, long story short. But the thing that I do find more compelling than just the, you know, like... the thing I find more compelling than just, like, oh yeah, it's hard to get there now, is how you would have been the first person to do that. Like, if you think about the number of people who must try to do a thing and how open the channels are when it comes to, you know, like, the idea of nations wasn't even invented. There was no immigration policy of, like, can you come into Japan or into a country like that? No, you can't. You just, it's, you know, like, the people there will hopefully accept you. Except a lot of the time they didn't. Like, a lot of, I was reading into the Great Fire of London, on the same wiki walk, by the way, from World War I casualties of the Soviet Union, because I wanted to reference how many people died in Russia fighting the big bad red guys that you gotta be cautious mentioning in a YouTube video. But yeah, so let's pick up the endstone box, by the way. Make sure we don't leave it again. Guess I did pick it up. I saw this as a shulker box. It is square and it is purple, so I'm not so ridiculous for that. But yeah, so I went another wiki walk and ended up reading about the Great Fire of London again. And yeah, I found this one to be interesting because it's like, oh yeah, people couldn't work out who lit the fire, so just gangs of people who lost their homes and everything else like that just went around, you know, they heard a rumor that it was set by the Dutch, so they looked for anyone that looked vaguely foreign and they just started, you know, like attacking them in that way. And it's like, yeah, that is like a weird instinct humans just have of like, in-group, out-group, when something bad happens, must be the out-group. Let's kill anyone who is a member of the out-group because they must have conspired in there. Again, one of the other, like one of the narrative points in, again, we're going to talk about World War II here apparently. It's Toy Cat's show. It's the 30th of December. We'll talk about wars in a Let's Play. What are you going to do about it? Nothing is what. So, one of the interesting things to me is that the narrative around German-Japan cooperation really was kind of built on the same thing. Like, that, even though they were part of the Axis powers, they're part of the same... They had a vague military alliance. There wasn't much trust between the two sides. They didn't have, like, a grand plan on how to carve up the world after they assured dominance of Europe. That's something that was just kind of like... it's kind of a fabrication after the fact. You need to play to people's tendencies of, like, oh, yeah, evil power took combined force with another evil power to make extra evil things happen. And it's something that just inherently fits in people's brains. It's, again, that's the thing about, like, if you accept how people actually are, if you accept there is some degree of weirdness around all those things, I feel like you can work to fix them much better than if you tried to say, oh no, we live in a world where everything is perfect and will be perfect forever. Instead of you say, things are good, but also, we could be better. It's a much easier selling point. And this is actually, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems around the world people are getting wrong. People, especially on the internet, where there's a higher rate of just dissatisfaction, let's say, with a lot of things in the world. It's a very, 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 very common belief that just everything sucks. We're all bad in all the ways. But the truth is like, society as we know it, we are living in the best period of human history, and there are still problems. And like, when you know that, or like, even if you don't agree with that, it's like, but no matter what period of human history you live in, there are going to be issues. The thing that defines us as a species is that we create issues. We don't create issues. We define the issues with which we struggle with. Even if we lived in a perfect dream world. Again, this is why, I don't know. Even if we live in a perfect fantasy land controlled by blah, 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 whichever deity if you're choosing. Even if we live in a perfect universe somehow, it's still near impossible to get humans to agree on anything. You know, like, to agree around anything more than, like, two very different ideas. Like, okay, so we've achieved a world where every single thing we want can be created at a whim. But it's human nature to then be like, but, you know, what now? The wanting to conquer something then move on to the next is arguably one of the reasons that we're such a powerful species. We've done so much. But it's also a thing that you need to acknowledge. You know, like, even if you acknowledge it as a flaw, you still need to acknowledge the benefits that it has brought us. And you need to acknowledge that there's no way to just fix it. It's not a thing that one day we'll wake up and be like, oh yeah, we fixed, I don't know, let's pick a thing. What do people want to have fixed? Everyone hates, again, actually, this ties into what I was just saying, like the racism thing. We're going to fix that one day. We're going to wake up and it'll all be fixed. If you have that as an expectation, you'll probably be disappointed, right? You'll probably, you know, I mean, just statistically speaking, if you expect at one point in your lifetime just humans to not have any fears about groups that are not their own, groupings of people with distinct characteristics to identify them, in the same way you're scared of gang members, you're scared of, yeah, I'm sure you're scared of gang members probably. If you're not, then good for you. But you know, it's people make giant groups that they like to define as good in some way. They're built around some ideal. Maybe this group of subscribers that we have, the people who follow my channel, maybe you want to call our common grouping, your common grouping, the fact that we all, or you all watch Toycat videos and that I really like the survival projects. We're all here because we enjoy something about that. And also, the live stream thing is like, oh yeah, let's hang out, let's talk, let's have a fun time, and whatever else. You know, like, again, pure survival, 100% survival that we vaguely mentioned earlier, or in a few times this week. That is a commonality. That is a thing that we all have in common. And therefore, you know, like, that's a simple group. But then, you know, let's say I'm like, oh yeah, and make sure you wear your Toycat merch so that you can show that all off. And that's I think I mentioned it before, like, if I see a Toycat shirt in real life, I'll know you probably do like me. But now imagine that becomes a big phenomenon where, like, it's not controlled by one person, it's not controlled by anything, it's just a vague collective. Think about, I don't know, there's so many different things like this, just movements that aren't even controlled by a person, they exist, like being against, I don't know, being against climate change, or being pro-climate change, I don't know. Like, you morph your version of events so that you have, you know, the people on your side are the best people ever, and then you morph it so the people against you, you're not going to talk to because they're not on your side, you're not going to interact with them on a regular basis, they are the worst people who get worse and worse and worse and worse, because if someone says to you ideas that vaguely conflate with ones that you agree with, like, oh yeah, people who watch Toycat videos, they're actually taller than average and they're likely to be more attractive, you're like, yeah, we are. Then if I say, oh yeah, the people who don't like me, the YouTube fat cats of the world, they tend to be, you know, Susan is taking 33%. It's 30% actually, sorry. Susan is taking 30% of all super chats. You know, that's a terrible thing. Why is YouTube taking 30% of the money that I earn with my reading out usernames badly ability? Which is, you know, actually how I make money from live streams. It's a good analogy because it's something that does personally annoy me a little bit. But like, I still don't know how that's floating. Like, this is a weird world when it comes to chorus plants. But yeah, these things are real and they're more believable to you. The idea that it's not just because, oh yeah, they need to run the site and there's credit card fees and, you know, it's a way for them to make money and then they can promote it to you and it's a synergistic relationship. Instead, you can very easily spin it into like, you know, Susan is taking our money. When the demonetization issue happens on YouTube, you know, YouTubers who are obviously against the thing, they, you know, like instinctively are going to be like, well, I mean, it could be anything causing this, you know, like obviously YouTube's got to play with the advertisers because without advertisers, there's no YouTube. Instead of something like that, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, my video topic is being picked on by YouTube. I can't believe YouTube just hates whatever thing it is, like history channels, really badly affected because they have to say, lots of terms that get demonetized. LGBT issue channels, like, you know, trans channels, all the other letters as well. I could have just said that. But, you know, channels that focus on these particular issues, obviously they're going to have words that are sadly associated with sex a lot of the time in their titles, gonna get them demonetized. But instead of seeing it that way, people are very quick to coalesce around their in-group, make that a thing, and use it to demonize the other, the thing responsible for the issues. And I find it's something I don't really like about humans. It's something I feel like is our worst characteristic that we all make worse all the time. And you know who's making this so much worse? Those darn people who are in-group and out-groupers. That's right, us intellectuals of the IBX Toycat channel. What we do, really great. We acknowledge when people are fighting over needless tribal banners. But people who aren't in our needless tribal banner, they're the ones who are causing all the real issues. Which, yeah, that was kind of fun. That was a rant, apparently. I didn't realize I had inside of me. But it's something I thought about a lot, apparently. And, yeah, to me, I feel like the one big issue, the one real thing that we can take from that is that the real thing we should try to do is not to not judge people by their appearance, but not to try to judge people as their, you know, like, not to try and associate certain characteristics with certain groups. When I see a tattoo, a part of me is like, oh my god, you have a face tattoo? That tells, you know, knowing that that is seen as it is by the world, you want to be seen that way. Maybe you could take something like that from it. But if you see like, oh yeah, it is a person who is wearing a shirt that's, I don't know, got an EU flag on it. Like, to me, that has a bunch of connotations. Maybe it's like a rainbow EU flag. But personally, what I like to do, if I'm actually ever going to interact with the person, if it's a stranger, you not have all the assumptions you like about strangers. That's my pro tip with Toycat. You not think that they're all terrible people, or they're all the best people, because that's what we do. We make assumptions all the time. It's just, it'd be better if we did, rather than saying, like, we shouldn't judge people by appearance, it'd be so much better if, unless you needed to see someone in public, you didn't have to. Like, you might be thinking, what do you mean you don't have to see someone in public? Imagine if literally you couldn't see them. The person that you're trying to look at in public, unless you're trying to focus on them, they're just a stick figure to you. You know, there's no individualized stuff there. Life would be so much easier if we just didn't have to look at people. You know, yeah, I wouldn't even elaborate on that thought. Life would be easier if we didn't have to look at people. Wouldn't it be so much? Like, oh yeah, instead of having to, you know, like, all be presentable to the world, you only have to be presentable to people you care about. This has always been my impression. Like, one of the things that I hate that I've grown in the last, like, 5-ish years is I do have a sense of care about what the world thinks about me. Just, you know, the average world. Like, I'm like, oh god, I'm a mess today. People are gonna see it and think X, Y, Z. If I'm, you know, like, wearing super, super lazy clothes, I'm like, oh god. I don't like that I feel that way about the world. But it is a real factor. It'd be so much better if, like, oh yeah, I'm actually blanked out right now. People can't see me at all anyway, so it doesn't really matter. That would be wonderful, right? It'd be so nice if the world just couldn't see you. And sometimes I wish that was how things were. But, yeah, speaking of things that I wish how things were, I guess. One, I now only have this many netherrack, which actually we could probably make another little dent into the floor of. And two, we've only got, like, one big mountain to go. And then we've made the whole route perfectly flat. Which is kind of nice to know, right? We're making, like, these little tunnels, too. It's a very fun little thing. Actually, you know, while we're here, I want to talk about something I probably shouldn't mention, but again, I tend to just mention the truth here, and, like, if you don't like it, it's your option whether you stay here or not. I try to be honest with people, and I recommend people try to be honest with people you know or care about, because if they don't like you based on the honesty, then, you know, you could be dishonest forever, or you could accept that that is how it was always going to go. Again, maybe that's a crazy opinion. Maybe that's out there and insane. But, yeah, so one of the things I've always kind of vaguely felt is, you know, be honest with people in that way. And the thing I was thinking in relation to this end road, as we're working on it, as we're finishing, again, this will be roughly 10.5 hours by the time we're finished today. So this is a really silly project, a really silly start. Lots of things about it were kind of silly, right? But it was very, very profitable. A lot of like, again, the exact amount I'll reveal in the video. I think it was in 4 digits, though, of how much people, you know, paid to make the road longer and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'd say really, it's a way of making. I've come up with a formula by accident that is actually able to make, you know, a certain amount of money. Like, it's a somewhat successful formula, and something about that is interesting to me, because I obviously could do it every week if I wanted to. Like, you know, every week we do some form of project where you can immortalize yourself in my Let's Play world in exchange for just, you know, $10, or maybe you could increase the money. Like, I'm sure if you make it $20, not more than half as many people would still be willing. But rather than trying to maximize profit and do these as often as I can, try to increase the amounts as much as I can. To me, the idea is very much about do them when I have a fun idea, and do them with tiers that make sense for me as a end user. Like, I still don't know if this is a bad business move or a good one, but my philosophy to this day has always been make the sorts of YouTube videos that I would be down to watch if I were watching them. It's a very uncommon philosophy, I am sad to announce to you all, but it is my personal philosophy on like how I run this YouTube channel and how I do live streams as well. Like, what would make a live stream more fun and compelling to me as a person? It's actually it's also like arguably the most selfish thing in the world. Like, rather than using empathy and trying to work out what other people think, I'm like, what would I care about? What would other versions of me out there be like? And I wonder, is that what all empathy really is? Is that what all people who are concerned about the world and other people and people of various different, you know, let's say disadvantages. But like, are people who care about all those things, are they really just super concerned about a version of themselves? Because one of the easiest ways to get people on board with, and this is why I recommend as like a way you should do things, but any form of inclusive, like inclusive design, is you gotta be like, hey, this also benefits you, don't you know? Did you know that the curb cuts that are in the street for disabled people also super beneficial, even if you're not disabled, because they allow like bikers and all these different groups in there. I really feel like one of the things about humanity is we're very focused on ourselves, but we're so focused on ourselves that we care about other people when we think about them as an extension of ourselves. And at least that's how I like to justify it, because that's the only way I do anything on YouTube. I'm like, you know, would I care about this? I would. Okay, let's do it. Would I not care about it? Well, clearly it's a bad idea and I shouldn't do it. But yeah, so this exact same thing is why my live streams are... I don't know when I'm going to do the next one of this form, or if I even will. I might never have a good idea to do it again. I might decide never to. But the thought in my head is like, man, I really want to do something like that again, of like marathon live stream, lasts as long as people are willing to make it last. Because the one thing about that stream, even towards the end where I was like, oh, we've been going for 7 hours, I really need to stop streaming now. Even then, it was still like, oh, but this is cool that this many people wanted to see it through. The number of people I recognized from the start of the stream all the way to the end, like, you recognize the same names in chats, especially the people who have become channel members. I recognized these things and I just looked and I was like, this is super cool. This is something I see and can spot. And it's nice to... It's really nice, I'd say, to kind of have that. So, yeah, it was a really fun concept that I'll do whenever it makes sense again. And I thought, I've had a few thoughts about, like, how could I do it again? But I always kind of conclude about, you're not going to do it for the sake of doing it, even if it's a highly valuable idea. Same thing with the raid sponsorship, right? The cool thing about... The thing money really buys you is the ability to only look for money in the ways you want to. Everyone needs to do something that gains them money at some point in the world, sadly or happily. I mean, it's a way that keeps us all working on each other, right? Because not only, again, I feel like that human desire of trying to look after yourself so hard that you look after people who are like you, because it helps you in a way and you want them to help you. I feel like that's a really cool trait. But when you combine it with the way our money system works, which is that you can create... The way to get money, for the most part, is to do value, something of value for someone else. Something that improves someone else's life to the point where they're willing to pay for it. Or something that makes them feel like they have to. There's a few ways you can do that one. But these are the things that people mostly value, right? It's like a live stream, but it's a video. There's a sign here saying I'm Welsh, and I think that's beautiful. Great little road sign. Remind me of how things are done here. But yeah, so just like that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we only have 500 blocks left. But if I am not horrifically mistaken, we have just, in fact, finished leveling out the road, which means until the very end, where I deliberately make it go onto the mountain, to show that the road's over, by the way. Until that point, we have officially, we have made a straight end road for 6,900 blocks. And this is now, in case you're curious, like, I want to kind of tell the story for those of you who aren't familiar. It's something, it's mostly not people who watch this Let's Play and watch the 7 hour stream, but, you know, you can see the highlights of it there anyway. It's something I want to do where I want to, like, when there is a big city project that takes me hours and that a lot of people enjoyed and it was a big event, but I know that people can't be expected to watch all 10 or 12 or sometimes, for the case of the million blocks, it was like 22 hours. For the case of the big survival projects, it's a lot more. I like to kind of sum it up in video form for people who aren't there for that. And I want to do something like that for this big road. I want to run a horse along it and show you its actual use. I want to show you how long it took me to walk along it the first time, which you've already seen in some form of podcast video from last Thursday, right? But yeah, these are things I wanna upload sometime soon, I guess. Also, we left a gap here. What a tarnation. A tarnation? Yeah, what a tarnation. What a shame. And yeah, actually, I want to go a little bit further beyond the road. Actually, do I? I want to leave it unloaded for when there's an end update, partially. I also want to keep on going. Maybe we'll do that one day. We'll just see how far we can go. Because I want to believe there's like a endstone gateway somewhere around here. And I can use that to get home. Also, I want to take down that, I've got a looting free sword anyway. Kind of want to get myself a bunch more shulker boxes, because we're going to be using a bunch of those, so maybe we should do that sometime. A lot of people ask, like, did I duplicate end boxes? Honestly, you just got to find a lot of these end cities. How do you find end cities? Make yourself a 7,000 block, it's actually 6,000 block, long pathway in the end. So yeah, this was a video and a half that I hope you all enjoyed. If you did like the extra long Let's Play, like it and let me know. Again, the truth is these videos do worse. Like, they take, when there's a certain length of Let's Play. I think it's above about 25 minutes, where the Let's Plays get longer and people don't view them more. So it's like just the same time investment for, so more time investment for the same, you know, return, let's call it. But then there's an effect where once you go past a certain point, fewer people will click on a video that's over about 50 minutes long, at least on my channel. And so as a result, today's video was longer, but it's because I wanted to talk to you longer, even at the cost of people watching the video and therefore seeing an ad and therefore all those things. So if you enjoyed this Let's Play, you can become a member. It's a thing we're doing for live streams. Live streams will be back in 2020. The Let's Play will also be back in 2020, and will look even better in the new year. But for now, I hope you all enjoyed this video, because I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.